He tried to hang out with Shane Dawson as recently as 2 years ago.
That's the video right there, folks. That's all we need to know.
FBI, open up!
Chances are, a good portion of you who click this video, a good portion of my fans at least, are asking yourselves, who is Gabe Brown? It's a question I had myself when I was approached about making this video not that long ago. Another portion of you who already know who Gabe is are probably wondering, who's this chick on my screen right now? Both very valid questions. For the latter, hi, my name is Courtney. Call me Orchard, call me Pete, call me what you like, just don't call me late for dinner. Unfortunately, if you're going to know who I am, it's likely because my sister is none other than Lily CD Call Orchard. For those who don't know, Lily was also a brony YouTuber who wrote multiple pedophilic incest fics, also groomed children from her fan base to later date them, and sexually abused me for 7 years in our childhood. I've got a video about what she did to me, I'll link it in the description below. Other than that, I spend most of my time on YouTube streaming, generally discussing my opinion and unprofessional experience with some rather heavy topics, or just hanging out with my audience. We laugh, we learn, we cope. With that being said, I just wanted to take a second to warn everybody watching that this video is not exactly going to be the most professional in tone. In fact, Gabe, buddy, if you're watching this, you're going to want to pause right here and go put on your big girl panties because this is not going to be fun for you. I am not known for pulling my punches. I am not known for hiding my opinion. I am not known for being diplomatic or even kind to people whose actions I find problematic and predatory. And everything I've seen in regards to making this video gives me zero, I repeat, zero reason to be diplomatic or kind to you. So have a seat, sir, and I use that term loosely, because I have some questions. A mild preface before we get started. Anyone's voice in this video besides my own is simply expressing their opinions and interpretations of the available evidence surrounding the accusations against Gabriel Brown. They're not stating objective fact or launching accusations at anyone themselves, just giving their interpretations of the evidence as it has been presented to them thus far, as well as the accused party's response to said accusations. I, on the other hand, don't give a flying rat's ass about any of that. I will not be prefacing my words with allegedly, because I am 100% with my whole chest and without a doubt accusing Gabriel C Brown of grooming his now wife for 7 years before marrying her. I am accusing him of sending a dick pic to a 13-year-old girl and for being an all-around predatory individual with no business being around anybody younger than him. I also won't be naming 3 individuals throughout the course of this video. Yes, I am aware that these names are public record, easily found, and even in the doc that will be linked below this video. However, all 3 of these individuals have received enough personal harassment across the board that should have been levied at the man who targeted all 3 of them. Whether or not they identify as victims, I'm going to prioritize their remaining mental health by not driving further harassment with constant name-dropping. This goes for Sweetie Belle's voice actress and Gabe's now wife, Apple Bloom's voice actress, and the girl who has recently come out about the dick pic that Gabe sent to her when she was 13. Gabriel C Brown, aged 35 years old, is most notably known as Black Griffin, the brony YouTuber that clawed his way into the industry via the mother of Apple Bloom's voice actress, as well as appearing alongside M at every convention and My Little Pony appearance since early 2014. Now, while controversy surrounding Gabe had been a quiet murmur in the pony convention sphere, it wasn't until 2020 when Gabe announced his engagement to none other than the voice actress of Sweetie Belle, best friend of M since childhood, a young woman 9 years his junior, and someone he had been an influential figure in the life of since her pubescent years. The talk quickly became more public of the fact that from all accounts, it looks like Gabe had groomed his new bride from the age of 14 until she herself pursued him when she turned 20. Now, I know some of my fans are thinking, Courtney, aren't you in an age gap relationship? Why, yes, dear viewer, I am. In fact, all I do are age gap relationships. You could say I'm fairly experienced in the matter. I was also an 18-year-old married to a 32-year-old, so I know from experience just how not kosher that kind of dynamic is. Back to Gabe. In late 2013, while still singing in the US Navy, he was approached by Monique Creeber, mother and manager, momager, to the voice actress of Apple Bloom, who was 13 years old. Monique pitched to Gabriel C. Brown, a 23-year-old US Navy singer with next to no credibility in the kids' entertainment industry, that she didn't know, The idea of him moving from the States to Vancouver, Canada, renting a room in her house, and working closely with her 13-year-old daughter on her singing career. This isn't speculation. This isn't a guess. We know this because M herself has stated such in her own testimony, trying to debunk the fact that Gabe groomed his now wife. So, to throw it way back, my mom reached out to Gabe years ago when he was still in the Navy and suggested we work together, as she would do all the time as a producer with plenty of different people over time. My mom and Gabe's mom oversaw all business ventures, performances, albums, videos, etc. Seriously, who do you think supervised my social media for me when I was a minor and read all those disgusting rumors when they started? My parents. Now, I'd like to take a minute to discuss both M's statements here and Monique's actions as a mother. What woman, mother, or any person in their right mind reaches out to an almost fully grown man who is in the U.S. Navy and asks them to move into their home and start working personally with their 13-year-old daughter?
There's a video of them all hanging out in the woods in the dark where they have a fort that they have already built at a prior time.
Love Shack, baby.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. And you know, honestly, as frustrating as seeing them defend Gabe is, I do feel sorry for those two girls, because if he put himself in their lives at such a young age and was there the whole time, of course they're going to think it's normal, because that's what they've known their whole lives.
Well, just from an outsider's looking in perspective, like, I literally only learned about this like last night. Just looking at it from skimming over the document, he didn't even put himself in their lives. His mother did. Like, from all accounts, his mother reached out to Gabe because he was prevalent in the Army or in the Navy for his singing or whatever, and said, you should work with my daughter. Okay, why?
Yeah.
Like, in what world does it make sense for you to fly a dude into, like not even saying that they flew him in, but to, like, essentially help a dude move to another country to live in your house? You've never met him, you don't know him, and you're going to move him in with your 13-year-old daughter and say, you should totally work with my 13-year-old daughter. Like, the red flags there alone tell me that if anything was going on, the parents would either just be blind to it because they're clearly fucking stupid, or are part of it. And for anybody to sit there and say, well, our parents knew, so it wasn't a big deal. People, look at Jeanette McCurdy. People encourage their kids to do shit that they really shouldn't do for a leg up in the industry all the time.
I don't think that's what was happening with parents. I think, as far as everything that I saw, I think they thought that she was going over to hang out with, and Gabe kind of ingratiated himself, and by the time they realized there was a problem, it was kind of too late.
Well, yeah, my main problem's with mother, because that's where it all started. While I understand that to M, this behavior had been normalized through her at the time young life by her obviously career-driven mother, who didn't see an issue exposing her child to multiple fully grown strangers for the sake of a career in the TV industry, an industry M herself recognizes as a predatory and unsafe one, we already know that statistically the likelihood of a child experiencing abuse in the home rises exponentially the moment you introduce an unrelated male to the situation. And Monique, apparently, by her own daughter's testimony, had such a habit of exposing her daughter to this risk that it was considered normal and okay by the time she was 13. Do you know who else's mother had a habit of exposing her daughter to dangerous and predatory people for the sake of her career? Jeanette McCurdy's mother. That's right, the I'm glad my mother is dead girl. Kids don't often get abused by strangers. We already know this. They get abused by people they know. Family members and friends of the family who have ingratiated themselves into the unit so as not to cause suspicion if the target were to speak out. So frankly, the caveat of my mom saw the tweets neither negates nor prevented the grooming that happened in plain sight. From late 2013 and on, whilst living with the Creebers and working closely with their young daughter, Gabe appeared in multiple videos with them, both in her home where they both lived and out at conventions where, if you wanted to book M, Gabe came along as part of the package, or you wouldn't have the whole Cutie Mark Crusaders at your convention.
a former con chair told me that the reason why Gabe was always at stuff as a special guest is, if you wanted to invite for Apple Bloom, Monique would basically require to also invite Gabe. They would quote unquote throw him in for free.
See what I mean? Like,
And
the mother keeps pushing the two of them together. Why?
yeah, and so it basically, like, they would, in order to have her, for example, if you wanted all of the Cutie Mark Crusaders, you have to have Gabe, basically. And that's kind of how he ingratiated himself into the guest of honor spot, even though he didn't really do a whole lot to earn a guest of honor spot. He did some background vocals on a few episodes, and that's it.
And to clarify too, so how it worked in the pony convention scene, I guess, if you want to call it, is there are the guests of honor who were specifically show staff. So like, you know, voice actors, you know, directors,
Yeah.
et cetera. And then there'd be people like me and Sophie and people that were just active in the fandom space that were called community guests. And Gabe was usually the only exception to that for whatever reason, and that was the reason.
Yeah, normally, if he were anybody else, he would have been a community guest, but for whatever reason, he was a guest of honor. And
He had Monique and
Yep.
Apple Bloom's voice actress to pull strings. Like, this just sounds like how Hailey Bieber got herself in front of Justin Bieber.
Oh, really? I have no idea about that story, but that sounds creepy if that's true.
Well, long story short, Hailey Bieber was a Baldwin. She was Hailey Baldwin, and her father is very connected, so basically she had daddy pull strings to put her in front of Justin wherever the fuck he was.
Oh my god. That's crazy.
Yeah. And she married him. Oh my god, that's totally creepy. I mean, that's totally cute and fine, right? This is exactly what happened with Gabe, and he just fucking did everything he could to put himself in front of her, and then once she was 18, 20, oh, let's get married. Now I'm going to insert a clip of one of these earlier videos. Notice the lack of either mother present in the filming. And this video, where Gabe, his now wife, who was 15 or 16 at the time, and M, who was also 15 or 16 at the time, venturing out into the woods together, alone, with no parents. And this one, where they did the exact same thing the next day. Again, no mothers or adults other than Gabe can be seen or heard. And this one, where the three are filming a whisper challenge. No parents seen or heard. and this video, where the two are sporting afro wigs and portraying racist stereotypes against black people.
And we are the 80s divas of the Central Break.
Oh, girl, you call yourself a diva. I call myself...
Did Monique oversee this video as well? Now, I bring these up to drive home one of 2 points. Either Mommy Monique wasn't as hands-on as Em would like to claim she was, or the woman, for lack of a better term, has a very questionable morality scale for what is appropriate for her 13-year-old daughter. And Gabe? Well, Gabe was 24 to 25 in this video, fully developed frontal lobe, and yet here he is being a bargain basement Shane Dawson's Letitia with a 15-year-old girl. Clearly the actions of an individual who makes good choices for the better of people around him. While speculation of a relationship between Em and Gabe had been growing online for some time, Gabe's response to the situation was iffy at best. At worst, they read as someone who doesn't want to send the message that they couldn't date to the person they're suspected of dating. I'm like her brother, she's like my sister, we're like family, but the age gap isn't illegal and the age of consent in Canada is 16. Editor Courtney here. I'm going to be putting a plethora of sourced information on screen here while I read off of one of them verbatim. If you'd like to read each source in depth, you can pause to read them here or find the links to each in the description below. Before we get into the subject of Gabe's now wife and how the two came about meeting, I want to take a few moments to go over exactly what grooming is. Grooming is a process that involves the offender building a relationship with the child, and sometimes with their wider family, gaining their trust and a position of power over the child in preparation for abuse. Groomers typically use certain patterns of behavior to lead a child to believe that what is happening is normal, or to make the child feel trapped. The grooming relationship can move quickly from being something that seems to have positive benefits for the child to being very frightening and isolating. A groomer hides their true intentions over time, gaining the child's trust and confidence in order to abuse them. The child or younger person is conditioned to respect, trust, and love their groomer. They may not understand that they're being groomed because they consider their groomer to be a friend, boyfriend, or girlfriend. Their groomer may also work to gain the trust of a whole family to allow them to be left alone with a child. If the groomer works with children, they may use similar tactics with their colleagues. Groomers gain trust by pretending to be someone they're not, for example, saying they're the same age as a child online. They gain trust by offering advice or understanding. They gain trust by buying gifts. Groomers gain trust by giving the child attention, by using their professional position or reputation, by taking the child on trips, outings, or holidays. Once they've established trust, groomers will exploit the relationship by isolating the child from friends or family and making the child feel dependent on them. Groomers will use power and control to make the child believe they have no choice but to do what the groomer wants. Groomers may introduce secrets as a way to control or frighten the child. Sometimes they'll blackmail the child or make them feel ashamed or guilty to stop them telling anyone about the abuse. Groomers use a wide range of strategies to entrap a child and manipulate them. They present themselves as approachable, likable, and having shared interests with the child they are targeting. Groomers will often start to touch a victim in ways that appear harmless, such as hugging, wrestling, and tickling, and later escalate to increasingly more sexual contact, such as massages or showering together. Groomers may also show the victim pornography or discuss sexual topics with them to introduce the idea of sexual contact. Groomers make their behavior seem natural to avoid raising suspicions. For teens who may be closer in age to the groomer, it can be particularly hard to recognize tactics to use in grooming. Be alert for signs that your teen has a relationship with an adult that includes secrecy, undue influence or control, or pushes personal boundaries. Groomers will test a child's compliance by persuading them to carry out inappropriate or abusive activities. They use tactics such as reverse psychology. For example, "I'm not sure about this, I think you may be too young." Or strategic withdrawal, such as, "It was just an idea, it's completely up to you," which give the child the impression that they are in control of the situation. Groomers can use social media, instant messaging apps, or online gaming platforms to connect to a young person or child. It's easy for groomers to hide their identity online. They may pretend to be younger than they are, and then chat and become friends with the children. Groomers can use multiple online platforms to contact the same child. They can spend time learning about a young person's interests from their online profiles and posts, and then use this knowledge to help them build up a relationship. Then, once a relationship has been established, they might encourage the child to communicate using a private or encrypted messaging service. Groomers may look for usernames or comments that are flirtatious or have a sexual meaning. They may look for public comments that suggest a child has low self-esteem or is vulnerable. However, groomers don't always target a particular child. Sometimes they'll send messages to hundreds of young people and wait to see who responds. The online environment makes it easier for groomers to target several children at once. It can also make the grooming process much quicker. I'm going over this in such extensive detail because many people, especially those currently being groomed, don't seem to understand what it is or what it looks like. It doesn't look like Herbert the pervert from Family Guy offering you a popsicle. It looks like the friend of the family telling you how mature you are for your age, giving you special attention they don't give other people like you, making you feel like you're so much different from everyone else in the best possible ways and nobody understands them like you do. It's the best friend you thought you could trust because your mother always tells you that you can, using everything they know about you and your family against you to mold you into the perfect little puppet for their needs. And they make it seem like a blessing when they're doing it to you. Gabriel Brown claims to have met his wife when she was 20, marrying her not very long after, and brushes off allegations of grooming as not possible because they were hardly around each other when she was a minor. And if they were, it was strictly in a professional sense. Now, something doesn't exactly sit right with me in that statement, and it could be because in M's testimony that she released in defense of Gabe and his relationship, she stated, "Gabe and I and my mom and dad and his whole family immediately hit it off. Our creativity, atypical brains, and sense of humor quickly bonded us together. Our families to this day are still very close. When people said it was weird back then, it was just them either being creepy or jealous of a completely platonic but super fun siblinghood resemblant friendship and family dynamic between all of us, entirely irrelevant from any show or work projects. Those honestly just happen to be something we basically did for fun on the side." C has never in any way been duped into a loving relationship. She fully kickstarted it herself at a legal age. She texted him when he was back in Vancouver for a work gig and she was an adult. How do I know this with utmost certainty? We have been best friends since we were 7 years old. We talk almost every day. So while Gabe was living at your house with your fun siblinghood resemblant dynamic, making it so the contractual obligations for Gabe were something we did for fun on the side, and C being your best friend you know everything about, she was never at your house? You never introduced her to your adopted adult brother? She never spent the night at your place while Gabe lived there? I personally find that hard to believe, but I digress. It could be this selfie, posted in 2015 with Gabe and his now wife hanging out going to see the Book of Mormon with M. It could be because this is the kind of tweeting Gabe was engaging in with his now wife as far back as 2014. It could be the tweets from 2016 from Gabe implying that he hangs out with his now wife more than other people. It could be the tweets that outright state, "I'm friends with the Cutie Mark Crusaders voice actresses." Or it could be that by 2015, Gabe's now wife knew how much he did or didn't swear. Or the tweets about his now wife's secret crush. Or the winking face on the tweet about who she ships herself with. It could be the tweets from both Gabe and his now wife using their family's age gaps as scapegoats for why a supposed relationship between the two of them wouldn't be that bad when she was 15 and 16. It could be the tweets about inviting Gabe to come take a dump with her when she was around 19. Or it could even be the picture of a 24-year-old Gabe putting the 15-year-old girl on his shoulders for funsies. I don't know. I'll let you be the judge on what stinks here. We know Gabe is lying about the fact that he was around his wife casually when she was a minor because the two of them both filmed video evidence of it and uploaded it to YouTube. But Courtney, those are all at conventions and therefore work-related, not casual. Really, dear viewer? Is hanging out in a fun drone-flying room work? Is putting a minor on your shoulders contractual? Is singling out the minor in a crowd while you're working professional? Because frankly, if you answered yes to any of these questions, then you, my friend, owe Colleen Ballinger an apology. At this point, I'd like to bring up and talk about the kind of conversations involving a superfan of Gabe's, Nora, and how wherever Nora is, Gabe's now wife is soon to follow, as is Gabe himself. Gabe has had a long-standing habit of flirting with Nora whenever she pops up, something that is not deterred by a minor being part of the conversation, the same minor Gabe went on to marry. If this is only encountering someone in a professional sense, then I don't understand why all of Twitter isn't making bank off of their thirsty tweets to tweens. I know some of Gabe's defenders, Saberspark, is going to come crawling out of the woodwork to tell me that those were just jokes, and I'd like to say something to that. He married her. No, they weren't. And to the rest who are going to tell me she was an adult when they dated, so was Woody Allen's stepdaughter when he married her. It doesn't change the fact that being an influential part of that girl's life from the time she was 13 makes it predatory at the least and grooming at the most. Also, are we noticing the trend that where Nora is, Gabe's now wife is soon to follow? Or vice versa? Okay, I'm just going to drop this tweet here of a one Mr. Gabriel C Brown, in his 20s and a semi-prominent figure in a children's show fandom, publicly tweeting a shirtless flirtatious picture to Nora, one of his most prominent fans. Now, I'm not saying that he tweeted that to Nora as plausible deniability that he wasn't aiming for his now wife, who was underage at the time to see the picture. Wait a second. That's exactly what I'm saying. You don't have to agree with me on this part. I'll let you judge what this looks like for yourselves. But everything from the questions about dating M to the flirting publicly with a 14 to 16-year-old girl on Twitter is screaming, I have plausible deniability here, which is not something that an innocent person needs to have. I'd also like to take a second to point out that Gabe has been very vocal about the fact that he and his wife didn't do anything until she was over 18. And frankly, I'd like to ask, how'd you get to that decision? It's not like two average individuals who got together after the two were over the age of 18 ever caveat their relationship with, she was over 18 though. No, a statement like that says that you discussed it, that one or both of you put down the hard line of not till you are over 18, which means anything, implying sexual contact, was discussed before she turned 18. Which, need I remind anyone watching this video, is still a crime itself. So a near 30-year-old man had a conversation or two with an underage girl about the fact that they can't do anything till she's over 18. This is grooming. No allegedly. No, in my opinion. This is grooming. Another thing I'd like to point out is in all this time, Gabe has totally not known his wife. He has never, at least publicly, been in any relationship. Not with someone his own age or younger. And it begs the question, why is it the first person you date and shove into the public eye is the same girl you groomed when she was a teen? Why not marry someone your own age? Is it because women your own age can see your abusive, predatory, manipulative, and exploitative behaviors a mile away and have the experience with boundary setting that you can't dismantle and shape into a subservient puppet you want? Or is it because all you need is a girl to feel like a man? A woman is too much for you, bud? Something about a fully developed frontal lobe scare you?
Yeah, well, I have some insight in that. So, like, one of the times I talked to Gabe, like, several years ago, I think that came up, and he just kind of said, like, oh, you know, I'm not really into girls, like, I'm not really into anything, you know, I just don't really, like, care. From, again, what I remember, you know,
oh, yeah, he's
hypothetically.
ace.
So, yeah, he's ace. Yeah,
remember,
that's what it was.
Okay, if you're
yeah,
ace,
I remember shortly after they got engaged was when he said that he was asexual, Which, even if you are, that doesn't mean you can't abuse people. That doesn't mean you don't have the capacity to do things that are, awful.
Especially when you're gonna sit there and be like, we didn't do anything until she was 18. Oh, but I'm asexual. Okay, so what's the anything? We didn't do anything until, so what did you do when she was 18? But it's not possible to be sex because you're asexual. But you had to put the caveat that she was 18 before you did it. Or you backed yourself into a fucking corner, my guy. And just because you're asexual doesn't mean that you can't feel sexual attraction, doesn't mean you can't have sexual urges, and it doesn't mean you can't act on them.
It's like, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah, and like, oh, I'm asexual. What does that have to do with anything? You can show your genitals to a child and have it not be sexual on your end, but it's still, 1, a crime, and 2, trauma for that child. Not that I'm trying to be dismissive of his wife and her autonomy. I'm simply interpreting the actions of a fully grown man whomst had no business flirting with a 16-year-old on Twitter, only to lie about it, start dating her before she could even drink in the country he lived in, and then marry that 16-year-old 4 years later. His wife doesn't have to identify as a victim for me to call Gabe's actions the grooming that they are, just as Tana Mojo can call what Cody Co did to her the exploitation that it was without identifying as a victim herself. Back to the years of 2013 to 2016. Gabe, his wife, and Em were all on the My Little Pony convention scene. While Gabe so totally didn't have interactions with his now wife that were not professional, a statement we've already established is false, not only was the talk of his growing inappropriate nature prevalent online, it was also present in the background of convention spaces.
A little bit, because like Sophie and I have both been on the brony scene for a bit, so we can, or at least Sophie can, or whatever, like we can speak a little bit on the internal mindset of like what Gabe was like at conventions, because I was like, I've worked with Gabe before, but I've never really been like close with him. And I always thought it was kind of off, like the relationship he kind of had with, and how that was a business thing, but not really, but they lived together, but not really. And like, he seemed open to like the flirtation, like aspect and the speculation of like, maybe they might be in a relationship or something like that. I don't know.
I've been suspicious of Gabe for the better part of a decade, mostly because, I've been, at these PonyCons for over a decade at this point, and, I have a younger sister, and I had a BronyCon staffer kind of like warn me about Gabe, like early on.
To any bitch that talk to him and they in love, just make sure you hide your little sister from him.
Basically, yeah. And I remember telling my sister, I remember pointing him out and saying like, "Hey, I've heard some stuff about him. Don't talk to him. Be careful." And just because of that, like, I would pay attention to him, and mind you, I don't really know much about, like, the YouTube scene. I don't really watch a whole lot of YouTube unless, like, it's something I purposefully seek out. Like, I watch Rhett and Link in the mornings, and that's pretty much it.
They're so funny, though.
They're very silly. So I didn't really know who he was, except, that he's the guy that, the BronyCon staffer told me to be careful around. My personal interactions one-on-one with Gabe have been very minimal. He probably doesn't even remember this, but he and Monique had come up to my table at BronyCon one year, and she had bought some Apple Bloom stuff that I had, and I just remember being weirded out by him, but that's also because I already had the context of BronyCon staffer telling me he was trouble, so that probably wasn't an objective calculation assessment of him. And I know 4 different either current staffers or past staffers that all think that he was a creep, and all agree, that they believe that they don't necessarily believe the official story with him.
Like, my read was he was kind of, at least from what I've seen and when I interacted with it, he was kind of tolerated in the space because like he was the creepers vouched for him. But because like
that's essentially, if like, that's the perfect shield. People can look at it like it's weird, but then a lot of people brush it off, be like, but her mom's right there, and her mom thinks it's fine, so we think it's fine.
Yeah. Which I think most people would do because they think, well, it's not my place. I'm probably overblowing this, like, I don't know.
Meanwhile, most abuse comes from the family.
Like,
So,
were there more people, like, suspicious, and they just, like, were overruled, essentially, by, like,
they were suspicious and, like, scared to say something, or originally they thought he was okay, but then they saw him dating Claire, and then kind of, in hindsight, looked at all the things that they witnessed and thought that it, is gross.
Editor Courtney again. Both I and another individual will be summarizing the incident we're about to discuss. However, I will also be putting the girl's own words on screen for anyone who would like to read it themselves. It can also be found in the Google Doc listed below. Now we get on to the most recent accusations. The dick pic. Last year, a user on Twitter reached out to Brony Fandom and relayed their testimony of interactions between her and one Gabriel C Brown 12 years ago. She initially reached out to Brony Fandom wishing to remain anonymous, but after someone had found out her identity and threatened to out her without her consent, further re-victimizing an individual already trying to process one YouTuber taking advantage of her, she came out publicly on Twitter with her story. According to her, and frankly, I've got no reason to disbelieve her, Gabriel started tweeting back and forth with her when she was 13. A fan, and otherwise not supposed to be on Twitter. After Gabriel moved their conversations to the DMs, he gave this girl a nickname and began speaking with her casually, eventually culminating in one night sending this 13-year-old girl he had nicknamed privately a picture of his genitals asking if nickname liked, prompting the girl to delete her entire Twitter account out of fear of her parents finding out. I know some of you are going to ask, where's the screenshots? Well, 13-year-olds who have just been traumatized by a grown man they look up to exposing himself to them while they were already breaking their parents' rules by going on Twitter aren't going to have the foresight to screenshot the proof that they broke their parents' rule. No, a kid that age is going to think that this is what they get for breaking rules and going on Twitter, and if they tell anyone, they're going to get in trouble. Regardless, I believe her. Not only because her own recollection of events line up with how people remember events versus constructive narratives, but because it also lines up with how Gabe has already shown himself comfortable interacting with children on Twitter.
She's been one of my followers for a long time. I haven't really known her like super well, but she's always been sweet in my DM, like in my responses and stuff, and she supported me and stuff, so I was aware of her existence. And I found out through a mutual friend about her Gabe allegations before they became public. So I know at least 2 people that knew about what she had said like 6 months before any of this came out. So, and she had no intentions of saying it publicly, like with her name attached to it or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found out it was her, first of all, for anybody, it just like would break my heart. But when it's somebody that I at least am acquainted with, it just really, really bothered me. And so,
that really sounds like she had just started processing it and talking to friends about it to be like, am I wrong? Am I delusional? Am I crazy in this? And
yeah, but I know somebody that was basically went through a situation that's similar to what Destiny said she went through, and they didn't start like talking about it and processing it until they were in their 20s. So that kind of tracks, it's sort of like you stuff it down, you don't talk about it, you don't think about it, and then it comes back, Well,
there's also just the lack of education around it. People like shove it down because they just simply don't know, especially kids when they're victimized, because they don't know, and they're like, their abuser had spent so long, and even if it's on Twitter, just like tweeting back flirty shit, like, are you trying to make me fall for you because it's working? Like, that's going to tell a kid that it's okay. So when they're thinking back on it later, it's like, well, was it okay or wasn't it? I don't know.
Right. And everybody says like, oh, that's innocent. And it's like, okay, well, what about with the context of he goes on to marry that child?
What about the fact that it's not innocent though? Like, I'm sorry, it just isn't. That's a child, and you're like, oh, are you trying to make me fall for you? Why are you getting flirty with a child at all? Why does that not
Yeah.
immediately give you the ick?
There is a wannabe YouTuber who she is not named that basically said that they were going to make a video outing her as the alleged victim, which is really shitty. I don't know how they figured out who it was, because at that point, Brony Fandom had talked about it anonymously, like with her anonymously, but not with her name on it, and basically she was scared of it getting out of hand, so she was like, well, if it's going to come out, then it's going to come out from me, and so she let it out, and Gabe has been tweeting like normal.
That's re-victimizing the victim, guys. You can't sit there and threaten the victim with, I'm going to out you because you're not
I know,
talking.
awful.
Like, what the fuck?
Oh, she never wanted to come forward. Like, I remember asking her if she would be willing to put her name by it, because I was talking to her privately and saying, it would carry a lot more weight if she were to say this publicly, and she was like, I'm sorry, I'm too scared, I can't deal with this, and I was like, that's fine, and then like a few days later she came out because she felt like she was being forced.
Well, that's what kind of like struck me about all of this. Like, I've been watching from a distance because we've been dealing with another case essentially, so that's why that's why Courtney's going to make the video. But it was like, it struck me as off because not only like she doesn't gain anything from this attention, it's not like she's like getting more followers or anything. If not, like she's losing stuff. But essentially, like it kind of pissed me off, like Gabe's reaction of just not saying anything and just liking other people defending him, and like maybe he got legal counsel not to say anything, but like I think the move would have just not to been liking other tweets, and because that just confirms you're aware of the situation essentially.
Yeah, you're aware, but you don't care enough to address it. Which there was this one girl named Violet who said that she's only 18, and he like was DMing her saying he's innocent, and someone looked into her, and apparently she's been DMing him since she was 14, which it could be totally innocent, but that is really weird. Why
do you need to privately tell her that you're innocent?
Yeah,
so
why?
she doesn't start questioning the way that you've been talking to her since she was 14?
It's really bizarre. But yeah, I do know that he sent Brony Fandom a cease and desist. I've seen it privately. I can confirm that is in fact true. He was able to send that cease and desist through the mail by accepting doxed information. Because Brony Fandom was doxed, and that's how they got his name and address to send the cease and desist. And anyway, I first got on Gabe's radar because I very naively thought, because of stuff that I know from behind the scenes and also seeing this, I made a post that was basically like, anybody else think this is creepy? And basically as soon as I did that, he was tweeting at me. Saber Spark was in my DMs being like, you don't understand, it's fine. I regret deleting it now, but I did it because I was being harassed for 12 hours straight.
Oh yeah.
But
I
I deleted the thread, just because, you get dogpiled by two YouTuber guys and their fans, you get, scared. And that's what I did, because I wasn't used to having that kind of attention. I think at the time I had like 3,000 followers, which like, I think about it now, why did they care about what some rando with 3,000 followers had to say about them when they had like 1 million each? You know what I mean? Like, I ended up apologizing to Gabe because I was so scared, and my family, I was living with my family at the time, and my mom was like, we don't have money to deal with a legal issue, you need to like backtrack this.
Yeah, no.
And so I apologized, which the Billy Bust Up team has tried to use against me and say like, Sophie is a liar because here she is apologizing to Gabe 5 years ago, and it's like,
saying I'm sorry I brought this up doesn't mean I'm saying I lied.
Yeah, or also like being intimidated 5 years ago and then learning even more information and deciding that, in spite of my fears, I'm going to speak up. Like, that doesn't change anything. But basically they tried to say I was like this compulsive liar with a lot of trauma that they feel sorry for, but I cannot be believed. And I'm just like, yeah, okay.
Okay, but like
Um,
Gabe and all his trauma is totally to be believed?
mm-hmm.
The people who in the like one of the when I was skimming through the document, I saw like it was someone said, "Oh, this person and I are both CSA and SA survivors." Okay, so you have trauma. You're not to be believed. You can't perceive it properly. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that goes both ways,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know, it broke me, and I couldn't let her go through this by herself, especially after having been dogpiled by Gabe and his fans, and by Saber Spark trying to tell me I didn't know what I was talking about or anything. I just remember that fear. And I don't know, I couldn't let her go through this by herself, and maybe it was stupid of me, I don't know, but I wanted to be able to live with myself.
But I've talked before on my streams about how people talk about this kind of shit online, and the way they act about it online is so fucking detrimental to the silent victims that are too afraid
Yeah.
to say anything and are going to continue to be too afraid to say anything as long as shit like this goes on. Like this poor girl has the
Yeah,
fucking
they
balls.
wonder why it took her so long, and it's because of, all of the stuff that's happened. It's like, what do you mean, why did it take her so long? Look at everything that has happened in the past 6 weeks.
But it's that opinion right there that people have. Why did it take you so long to come out? That right there sends a message to silent victims that they have a job to do, that they have a responsibility to speak out. And like, I'm sorry, but fucking no, they don't. No victim. It's not a victim's job to have something done about their predator, okay? It is not a victim's job while they are processing and healing and trying to put their life back together to throw themselves in front of the firing squad of this person that you all love did something fucking horrible. And
I completely agree.
she started enough with the balls to start talking about it, and it's hard enough to get to a point where you're ready to process this kind of shit, and then somebody turned around and used that against her and said, I'm going to out you unless you do what I want because I want to be a YouTuber, okay?
Yep.
I've talked about victims of my sister that do not wish to be named, that do not wish to speak out publicly. I've mentioned the things that they are okay with me saying happened to them, and nobody's pressured them to come forward because they don't know who these people are, because I'm not going to fucking name them. I'm not even going to gender them because what happened to them matters. So does their privacy and their healing.
Maybe this will sound mean to Gabe's fans, but like, if she was doing this for attention, why the hell would she pick Gabe? Like, I feel like he's a has-been YouTuber. Like, yes, he has a few hits and like he rides off of those hits for years, but the most people think of him as like, oh, that one older brony YouTuber. Like, if you were going to pick somebody to lie about, wouldn't you pick somebody that was more like hot in the moment? I don't know. It's
seriously though, you'd pick a topic that people were talking about. You'd say Colleen Ballinger sent me something because she's trying to come back. There's also just like, you don't get clout from saying that you were sexually abused or groomed or targeted. Like, you do not get positive attention from telling the world you were victimized. Because essentially, and what so many people don't really seem to realize about this, the second you say that online, you put a target on your back for every other fucking predator out there that goes, oh, fucking freshly primed meat, boys.
Yep.
Because, like,
yep, and then
and this happens with a lot of victims where they'll get victimized and they'll get re-victimized and think, well, I've been through this before, I should have seen it coming. No, absolutely not, actually. The fact that you've been victimized before means you are easier to be victimized in the future because the grooming groundwork has already been done. And by the time victims speak out about this shit, it's never the first victim. It is never the first victim. So talking about how when she was 13, she got sent a fucking dick pic, that is not the first dick pic he sent to a 13-year-old. That is not the first sexually charged DM he has sent to a 13-year-old. That's probably the 20th.
My therapist actually said the same thing, that, people who do these things, it's not usually one person, it's usually a lot. And I believe her.
This girl has since been harassed into deleting her testimony off Twitter and going into hiding because so many people would rather believe that someone would lie about a nobody abusing them for clout as opposed to the nobody being a predator. She also had to face the vitriol of the why didn't you speak up sooner crowd. And for those people, I hate to break it to you, but it is never the victim's job to ensure something is done about their abuser. Not to mention that the reason people hesitate to speak out to begin with is because this is the kind of response they get. I've said this countless times in my live streams. How people respond to this kind of shit is paramount to the silent victim's decisions going forward. At this point, we should all be aware that by the time a victim becomes outspoken, they are not the first or the only one. The silent victims will always outnumber the outspoken ones, and for every one victim that speaks out, 3 to 5 more are staying silent. So how you treat that one speaking out sends a message to every other victim paying attention and measuring if it's worth the cost to speak out themselves. And by forcing a victim out into the public, that sends the message that your trauma is only valid if it is useful to me personally. And to that girl, if you are watching this, you deserved so much better from everyone. Frankly, so many people shit the bed in regards to basic human empathy when it comes to this girl, and I hope every one of them steps barefoot into dog shit this summer. Case in fucking point, since I've started the process of making this video, another past fan of Gabe has come forward with testimony and Snapchat logs of Gabe privately contacting her when she was a minor. This girl also claims that Gabe sent her a dick pic, as well as used the same sort of language and exact same pickup lines on her that he did on the first girl that came forward. She's not released her name, and who could blame her after Gabe and his goons chased the first one off Twitter and accepted doxed information about the loudest whistleblower on this situation. I'm going to provide her screen recording of her conversations with Gabe now. You can pause to read them. Spoiler alert, the dick pic is not here, because as we talked about, a 13-year-old is not just going to save a picture of a grown man's genitals and keep it for years. And finally, to round this entire shit show of a video off, we have the Billy Bust Up development management team.
So Billy Bust Up is an indie game, a platformer, like a musical rhythm platform game. And Gabe plays this character Barnaby, who is the main like one of the main villains. He's like this owl character, and that he has a song that kind of went viral there called "A Million Ways to Die." And anyway, apparently sometime last year, some older screenshots came out about him, of like him flirting with Claire before she was legal and stuff like that. And Katie, the creator of Billy Bust Up, basically made this document. Made the document back then in like summer of last year, saying, "Oh, these are like inside jokes. We don't, you're reading too far into them. These are all lies. Like, I think this is Claire's dad that's trying to harass them. All this other stuff," and basically just refused to look into it at all. They also completely ignored the minstrel show stuff, which I don't know if you guys know about this, but Gabe did a minstrel show with Michelle when she was like 15, where they both dressed up like a stereotypical black woman with like the black scent and stuff. It was very racist and disgusting. Anyway, fast forward to this year, it comes out and stuff. They don't say anything for a month, and then they drop this 30-page document that basically spends 80% of it going through each person that has stood up for and said like, "Oh, well, Sophie's a liar because she has trauma, and everybody that's in this are actually secretly 4chaners who have it out for Gabe and have had it out for Gabe for years." I don't go on 4chan. Also, at the very end, say Gabe is innocent, but also they believe and they hope that she finds her truth soon. And it's like, what does that mean? And also, one of their co-creators, James, who went by James Blueprint, his account is now down, but that's what he went by. He started mocking the situation and said that, that basically he was a liar and that we're all mentally unwell.
Too Long Didn't Read, Billy Bust Up is an indie game currently in development that has Gabe Brown working as a voice actor / singer for one of the main antagonists. His work on the game does predate the most recent document and outright accusations. However, attention was brought to the Billy Bust Up team in regards to it all, and they themselves responded with a doc of their own. One in which they defend Gabe, repeat his claims of not having really known his wife till she was over 18, and lumped anyone with a problem with Gabe's actions with his minor fan base as 4chaners, as if that's really indicative of anything offline. Notably, another video game development team, the one behind Poppy Playtime, also had a collaborative game in the works with Gabe. However, after the growing conversation around his grooming of his child bride, the team launched an internal investigation and decided upon their findings to shelve the project indefinitely. Gabe responded to this recent discussion surrounding him in a rather, well, guilty way, frankly. He hasn't said much other than that he didn't know his wife until she was 20, but did begin slapping the threat of lawsuits on people to get them to stop talking about him. Clearly something an innocent individual does when facing talks of grooming on the internet, they run to a lawyer. Now, sure, one could argue and say that if he didn't groom his wife, this is all grounds for defamation. And I'd like to say, no, it isn't. Defamation requires the caveat that the defendant knowingly lied with malicious intent to destroy the plaintiff's reputation and career. If I, or anyone else interprets your public tweets as grooming and feel the need to warn the public of what looks to me to be predatory actions, well, I'm not knowingly lying for malicious intent, am I? I'm interpreting events that are easily seen as they happened and after the fact, and stating what it looks like to me. And on the off chance that Gabe could in any way prove without a shadow of a doubt that he didn't groom his wife, without lying, stretching the truth, or erasing history, then I would simply be found incorrect about my interpretation and not maliciously lying to cause harm. Not to mention the fact that my goal is to warn future victims of anyone's grooming, not to cause inherent harm to the non-existent reputation of an individual who is hardly known outside of My Little Pony. That being said, if you want to waste your money filing frivolous lawsuits with the state of Arizona because you don't like how people interpret your public actions, message me, Gabe. I'll give you my address so you don't have to get doxed info for the second time. I know more about defamation than you do, big boy. Try me. Okay, we've made it. The end of the video. I hope that by this point you understand why it is that so many people have had such an issue for so long about Gabriel Brown. Why I have an issue. If you don't, red flag mentality. Anyway, I've been here far too long to come up with some prolific summary of all the rancid fuckery we just witnessed, so I'm just going to end this video off with one last clip of Gabe making a joke, if you could call it that, of not needing consent. You're disgusting, Gabe. Black Griffin. Whatever the hell it is you call yourself. I'm Courtney. Later, Gators.
Need some consent, if you know what I mean. Oh. Need some practice, if you know what I mean. All right.
For the record, I don't need consent, if you know what I mean.